The anime begins by showing a young man named Takamiya Honoka, who looks lethargic and uninspired and living his days at school. Takamiya always goes to school by bus and often meets his classmates, one of whom is a girl named Ayaka Kagiri, the most popular student in his school. Takamiya and Ayaka sit next to each other at school. Even so, they never chatted with each other at all. Ayaka once accidentally dropped her eraser. However, when Takamiya took it and gave it back to the girl, Takamiya became the target of bullying by her fans because he was considered a bother. While doing picket duty, Takamiya accidentally finds a teddy bear that says that the school building will collapse on him. Sure enough, not long after, a school building suddenly appeared out of nowhere and almost fell on Takamiya. Takamiya, who thought he was dead, finally realized that someone had saved him, and that person was none other than Ayaka. Ayaka then tells Takamiya that she is a witch, and her job is to protect him. Elsewhere, the witches that carried out the attack on Takamiya were seen. Having failed with the first attack, they then ordered an army of tin soldier rabbits to attack Ayaka and Takamiya. However, when Ayaka was facing the army of rabbits, Takamiya managed to get into their trap. Takamiya tried to be calm when the rabbit troop was about to execute him, because he thought everything was just a dream. Not long after, Ayaka, who realized that Takamiya was in danger, immediately came there to help him. Takamiya, who still thought that the attack was a dream, then told Ayaka that she looked very beautiful, even when she was in his dream. He also thanked Ayaka because she was willing to save someone as ordinary as himself. Ayaka then responded to Takamiya's words by telling him that everything was real and that protecting him was her mission. After that incident, Takamiya and Ayaka go home from school together, where Ayaka reveals that her mission is to protect him because he is her master. Takamiya, who heard this, was silent and confused as to why someone like him could become the master of a beautiful and popular girl like Ayaka. The next day, while on his way to school, Takamiya was surprised by the appearance of Ayaka, who stated that she wanted to sit next to him. Seeing Takamiya sitting close to Ayaka then made Ayaka's fans irritated and glared at him. Because Ayaka is always near him, he seems uncomfortable because all of Ayaka's fans are against him. They didn't even hesitate to bully Takamiya in front of Ayaka. Since Ayaka's job is to protect Takamiya from the evil witches, Ayaka doesn't do anything to defend Takamiya from his bullies. Takamiya, who couldn't stand the bullying he was experiencing, then rushed away from Ayaka. While alone, Takamiya meets a girl named Tanpopo Kureishi, who turns out to be a tower witch. Tanpopo is the witch who attacked Takamiya yesterday. She then took the opportunity to kidnap Takamiya. However, her action was immediately caught by Ayaka, who then saved Takamiya. Tanpopo was angry, then ordered the whole army of rabbits to kill them. Ayaka then tried to protect Takamiya from the brunt of the rabbit army's sharp sword with her own body. Seeing the injured Ayaka, Takamiya then felt guilty for not obeying her request to stay by her side, no matter what. Ayaka, who saw Takamiya, looked very sorry, then asked him to close his eyes. After that, Ayaka then used her magic power to destroy the entire army of rabbits with one big explosion. The rabbit army had been defeated, but Tanpopo managed to escape. After that incident, everything returned to normal, including Ayaka's body, which was not injured at all, and they returned home together. The next day, Takamiya is surprised by the appearance of 5 transfer students in his class. One of them is Tanpopo. The other 4 transfer students, Kana Utsugi, Rin Kazari, Kotatsu Katsura, and Mei Menoa, are all tower witches just like Tanpopo. One day, Takamiya, who was heading to his class, was surprised by the presence of Ayaka, who was torturing the 4 of tower witches to find out about their purpose here and the reason they attacked Takamiya. Ayaka then explained to Takamiya that she had used her magic to get Takamiya to come there without realizing it. Takamiya then asked the tower witches why they wanted to kill him. Tanpopo then revealed that they wanted to get the white stuff inside Takamiya's body. However, not long after, one of the tower witches, Mei Minoa, came there to free her friends and kidnap Takamiya. Mei managed to distract Ayaka and take Takamiya away from there. Ayaka, who knew about it, didn't just stay silent and immediately chased after Mei. Ayaka managed to corner Mei and seemed unfazed by the attacks that Mei launched at her. Mei then attempted to kill Takamiya by ordering her canine companion to bite Takamiya's neck. Unexpectedly, the one injured by the bite was not Takamiya but Ayaka. Taking advantage of the moment when Mei was careless because she was surprised by what had just happened, Ayaka then turned things around and counterattacked Mei. Mei, who felt cornered, finally decided to run away from there. After that incident, Ayaka began to realize that the dangers surrounding Takamiya were increasing, and she had to find out who was behind all the attacks. Knowing that he has been targeted by the evil witches, Takamiya begs Ayaka to teach him magic so that he can protect himself and doesn't need to bother Ayaka anymore. Shortly after the incident, Takamiya goes on a date around town with Ayaka, where he assumes that she will teach him about witchcraft. Ayaka then explained to him about the conflict in the wizarding world between the Tower Witches and the Workshop Witches. The Tower Witches are witches that use magic for their own reasons. They have very little care for the world and people, and always use their magic for evil purposes. Meanwhile, the Workshop Witches are witches educated in witchcraft workshops, and trained to stop the evil events performed by the Tower Witches in any major city anywhere in the world. The Workshop Witches build workshops in cities where many people gather and live, and keep watch to make sure that no magic users are using their magic for evil. While accompanying Ayaka shopping, Takamiya accidentally saw a woman helping a little girl. Seeing the kindness and sincerity shown by her, Takamiya was touched. However, when she saw Takamiya, she immediately knew that Takamiya was her target, and immediately called her friends to attack him. That woman is the Tower Witch, just like Tanpopo and her gang. Ayaka, knowing this, immediately saved Takamiya and the little girl who was accidentally involved in the incident. Ayaka could easily defeat all of them. After that incident, Ayaka then accepted Takamiya as her pupil and promised to teach him about magic. Ayaka then invites Takamiya to their school to meet the chairwoman, Kazane Kagari, who is Ayaka's surrogate mother and the head of the Workshop Witches in the city. After another quick encounter with Tanpopo and the gang, Ayaka begins training Takamiya on how to use his own latent witch powers, including the ability to hide in plain sight and fly on a broomstick. On the other hand, because of his close relationship with Ayaka, especially after she often taught him about magic, Takamiya was always the target of bullying at school. Even Takamiya's locker was filled with threatening letters from Ayaka's fans who hate Takamiya because Ayaka is always around him. Takamiya tries to get used to the harassment that he got from his schoolmates. But still, Takamiya often feels frustrated and mentally down. In fact, according to him, the bullying carried out by his schoolmates was as terrible as the physical threat from the Tower Witches who wanted to kill him. While on the bus with Ayaka, Takamiya met a powerful Tower Witch named Kranoir Schwarz. Unlike Tanpopo and the gang, Kranoir is quite powerful, where she can easily paralyze Ayaka's movements. Kranoir then stabs Takamiya in the stomach to hurt Ayaka. Seeing Ayaka injured and collapsed unconscious, Takamiya tried to help her. However, Kranoir explains to Takamiya that Ayaka uses the damage transfer technique, so that any wound or pain experienced by Takamiya will be transferred to Ayaka's body. She explained further that Ayaka didn't suddenly use this technique for no reason, because Ayaka had already made a contract with Takamiya so that she could borrow the great power that Takamiya had. Kranoir then promises him that she will save Ayaka, as long as he is willing to swallow a mysterious candy to unlock the great power hidden in his body. However, before Kranoir got her wish, Ayaka then got up and immediately put all her strength into attacking Kranoir. But Kranoir manages to escape, and Ayaka loses conscious. Shortly afterward, Ayaka is taken to the hospital to treat her injuries. Knowing that Ayaka will always get damage from every wound he experiences, Takamiya feels guilty and is determined to become stronger in order to protect himself. Takamiya reached into his pocket and found the candy Kranoir had given him. Then he decided to keep the candy. After that, Ayaka began to teach basic magic to Takamiya, where they would train Takamiya's physique first by carrying Ayaka's body. On the other hand, Tanpopo and the gang seemed to be involved in a dispute with another Tower Witches who attacked Takamiya in a shopping center some time ago. The witches apparently deliberately came to the school and disguised themselves as transfer students to take the white stuff, which is Takamiya's powerful power. Switch back to Ayaka and Takamiya, who are training at the school gym, where Ayaka asks him to take out a broomstick from inside the robe. However, no matter how many times he tried, Takamiya always failed to do so. Ayaka then tells Takamiya that they will not be seen by ordinary humans if they are wearing the robes. Since the school gym will be used by students who want to exercise, Ayaka and Takamiya end up going elsewhere on broomsticks. When it was getting late, Takamiya saw a girl who was being bullied. Takamiya then asked Ayaka to help the girl, but Ayaka refuses and says that punishing bullies is the duty of the police. Takamiya, who was determined to keep helping the girl, then tried to remove his broomstick and finally succeeded in doing it. Even though he had never learned to ride a broom like a professional magician, Takamiya didn't seem to have much trouble doing it. However, when Takamiya was about to help the girl, how shocked he was when he found out that the bullies were the Tower Witches. They can also easily bring down Takamiya. Knowing Takamiya was in danger, Ayaka immediately rushed to save him. The scene then switches and shows a powerful tower witch named Medusa, who is slowly cracking open her supposedly unbreakable prison in Rothenburg. Medusa is one of the most dangerous witches, who will threaten the safety of the world and humanity if the seal is broken and she is free again. Elsewhere, Tanpopo and the gang are discussing how to kidnap Takamiya and trick Ayaka, because Ayaka is too strong and it is very difficult for them to defeat her. In the middle of their conversation, Noir comes and intends to plan something with Tanpopo and the gang to take the terrible power hidden in Takamiya's body. One day, Takamiya's little sister, Kasumi, who has an extreme brother complex with Takamiya, seems jealous of her brother who often spends time with Ayaka. Takamiya didn't say anything to his sister about Ayaka being a witch, including about himself being the target of the evil witches who were after something hidden inside his body. However, Kasumi still suspects her brother for acting strangely, so she follows him to school. Elsewhere, Ayaka, who was waiting for the bus that would take her to school, was suddenly attacked by Mei and the Tower Witches. At the same time, Tanpopo prepares to kidnap Takamiya as they had planned with Noir, where Noir informs that Ayaka's magic power will weaken if she is separated from Takamiya, and they will find it easier to face Ayaka when the girl is off guard. However, even though Ayaka's strength was slightly weakened, Tanpopo's gang was by no means a difficult opponent for her, so she could easily defeat them. At the same time, Kasumi, who knows that her brother are in danger, then tries to save him, where Kasumi reveals that she is a workshop witch. Kasumi uses a giant teddy bear to fight the giant tin soldier rabbit that Tanpopo summons to fight her. However, when Tanpopo's gangs come up to help the evil witch, Kasumi lets the teddy bear grow so large that its attacks destroy a significant portion of the town, while leaving the people unharmed. After that incident, Ayaka also promised that from now on, she would protect Takamiya for a full 24 hours, and asked Takamiya to stay at her house. Meanwhile, because her plan failed, Noir then gathered the Tower Witches in the city and went back to planning something. Elsewhere, Ayaka's mother, Kazane, gets word that Medusa has managed to escape from prison. After successfully foiling the plans of Tanpopo's gang, Takamiya returns home with Ayaka and asks his mother, Komachi, if he can stay at Ayaka's house from now on. Despite strong opposition from Kasumi, who is unwilling to let her brother live with Ayaka, Komachi then agrees to Takamiya's request. Komachi even begged Ayaka to always protect her son. Komachi then revealed to her children that she was best friends with Ayaka's mother, Kazane, when she was still in school. Because of their close friendship, Komachi had an agreement with Kazane in the past, in which they agreed to marry the man of their choice, and set up their future children to be married off. Hearing this, Kasumi and Takamiya looked very surprised because they did not expect their mother to make such a ridiculous agreement. Kasumi is jealous, then strongly opposes the matchmaking. However, Komachi ignored Kasumi and then asked Ayaka and Takamiya to leave immediately. Arriving at Ayaka's house, Takamiya looks amazed to see her family mansion, which looks like a very majestic and luxurious skyscraper. Ayaka then took Takamiya to her room, which was on the top floor. However, upon arrival, Ayaka instead told Takamiya to go back downstairs. Ayaka realized that Medusa was already in her room. Knowing that something was wrong because Ayaka had told him to leave, Takamiya immediately went back upstairs and checked what was really going on in Ayaka's room. How surprised Takamiya was when he found out that Ayaka was fighting a powerful witch. Realizing that she was starting to have a hard time dealing with Medusa, Ayaka immediately ordered Takamiya to get out of there. But Takamiya refuses to leave Ayaka and decides to fight to help her against Medusa. She then tried to launch an attack at Medusa, but Medusa used magic that instantly turned Ayaka into stone. Having no other choice left, Takamiya then swallowed the candy that Noir had given him earlier, regardless of the risk that would happen to him. Not long after, the white stuff hidden in Takamiya's body finally appeared, and it was revealed that it was the White Princess Evermillion. Using a little of her strength, Evermillion manages to defeat Medusa and destroys most of Ayaka's family mansion, as well as most of the school building. On the other hand, Kazane, who saw her mansion destroyed, suddenly became furious and called for a massive hunt for Medusa and the Tower Witches. After successfully getting rid of Medusa for a while, Takamiya then begs Evermillion to save Ayaka. Evermillion then reveals to Takamiya that all he had to do to save Ayaka was to kiss Ayaka passionately. Hearing this, Takamiya did so, and he finally succeeded in resurrecting Ayaka. After saying that, Evermillion then started to disappear from there, and asked Takamiya not to call her too often, and to entrust his strength and safety to Ayaka. Right after Evermillion had completely disappeared from Takamiya's sight, Medusa seemed to be closing in on them and preparing to attack them. Because Takamiya had entrusted his power to Ayaka, she was able to easily deal with Medusa's attacks and defeat the evil witch. Takamiya, who had been unconscious after the incident, then thought that their fight against Medusa and his meeting with Evermillion was just a dream. However, Ayaka then showed him that she was right beside him. Because Ayaka's family's luxurious mansion has been destroyed by the battle, Takamiya decides to return to his home, and Ayaka will live with him there. Meanwhile elsewhere, Chronoir has managed to gather the Tower Witches and brainwash them into following all of her orders. However, before Chronoir can carry out her evil plan, Kazane and the Workshop Witches capture Chronoir and her followers, and then torture her to obtain information about Medusa's attack. Elsewhere, Kasumi, who seemed happy that her brother had finally returned home, intended to wake up her brother. However, how surprised Kasumi was when she saw Ayaka, who was in bed with her brother. Kasumi then blamed her mother for allowing Ayaka to live with them. Kasumi said bad words to her mother, which then made her feel shocked until finally she collapsed because her health condition suddenly declined. Takamiya then told Kasumi to apologize to their mother for being rude. Seeing her mother's condition, Kasumi immediately regretted her actions and apologized to her mother. The next day at school, the student council holds a meeting to discuss Ayaka and Takamiya's growing relationship, and they all oppose the relationship because Takamiya is deemed unfit to be with Ayaka. The student council president then asked for help from their science teacher, a man named Mikage, to do something. When Ayaka and Takamiya arrived at school, Mikage-sensei then separated Takamiya from Ayaka, using Clark's third law as an excuse. Mikage then took Takamiya to a place filled with illusions. Mikage then warned him that one of the 5 seals in Takamiya's body had been broken after he swallowed the candy Chronoir gave him, and if he were to reveal that information to the chairwoman, then Kazane would not hesitate to take extreme precautions which might endanger Takamiya's life. Mikage-sensei threatened to tell Kazane about it if Takamiya refused to part with Ayaka. But then, Ayaka managed to find out where Takamiya was, and easily defeated Mikage-sensei, then saved Takamiya. Using her position and popularity as the princess at school, Ayaka unilaterally replaces the student council president with Takamiya. After appointing Takamiya as the new student council president, Ayaka then persuades a student who is the student council vice president to give up the position to her, which the girl immediately agrees to because she is a big fan of Ayaka. After that, Takamiya and Ayaka are now officially the student council president and the vice president, and Ayaka asks all students not to interfere with their relationship. After school, when Ayaka and Takamiya are stopping by a doll shop, Kasumi suddenly appears and shoots Ayaka with drugs, then kidnaps Takamiya to take him out of town, where Ayaka and Kazane's powers shouldn't be able to reach them. Kasumi apparently heard Mikage-sensei's words, and since Ayaka is Kazane's daughter, she didn't believe Ayaka either. On the other hand, Ayaka apparently recovered quickly and used a dragon to chase Kasumi and Takamiya, where she shot down Kasumi and her giant teddy bear plane, saving them both. Arriving home, Takamiya apologizes to Ayaka for Kasumi's annoying behavior. However, Ayaka didn't mind it, and instead felt admiration for Kasumi, who she thought had great abilities as a workshop witch. Ayaka is also impressed by the siblings' bond that exists between Takamiya and Kasumi, which makes her jealous because Ayaka never knew what it was like to have siblings. Unexpectedly, Ayaka then asked Takamiya to think of her as his older sister and called her sister. The next day, when he woke up from his sleep, Takamiya looked surprised to find Ayaka was at his house and was cooking. Ayaka then reminded Takamiya that she was now living at his house. Since Takamiya's mother and his sister were out shopping with Kazane, Ayaka also cooked and prepared food for the two of them. After eating Ayaka's homemade dish, Takamiya complimented her on how delicious it was. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Takamiya and his family, Ayaka turns out to be secretly hiding Medusa and Tanpopo and the gang in her room in Takamiya's house after their final battle. Tanpopo, who was annoyed that Ayaka did not treat them well, then asked Medusa to do something so that they could counterattack against Ayaka. However, Medusa said that it was better for her to hide with Ayaka, because she didn't want to deal with Ayaka's mother, who was far more dangerous and had tremendous power than Ayaka. The reason she hid Medusa and the others from her mother was because she didn't want her mother to know that one of the Evermillion seals inside Takamiya's body had been broken. If her mother finds out that Evermillion seal has been broken, then Kazane will target Takamiya and won't let him wander around, so Ayaka is willing to do anything to protect Takamiya. That night, unbeknownst to Medusa, Tanpopo and the gang tried to secretly kidnap Takamiya, but couldn't seem to find the right moment as Ayaka had always stood guard by his side for a full 24 hours. Ayaka then teaches Takamiya about lessons at school, but Takamiya instead asks her to teach him to fight. Not long after, the rain suddenly fell heavily, so Ayaka and Takamiya rushed outside to bring in the clothes that were drying. At the same time, Takamiya's family and Kazane finally came home from shopping. When Takamiya was about to dry himself in the bathroom, suddenly the young man accidentally met Mei and Kotetsu, who immediately caught him. Seeing Tanpopo and the gang trying to kidnap Takamiya, Kazane immediately invites her daughter to fight against them. Unexpectedly, Ayaka instead joins the Tower Witches to fight her mother in order to protect Takamiya. Kazane suddenly felt surprised because her daughter turned against her and protected the evil witches. Kazane then asked Ayaka about the reason for her defiance, but Ayaka didn't say anything and just stood there to stop her mother from fighting Tanpopo and the gang. Takamiya, who finally knew the reason why Ayaka had hidden Medusa and the others from her mother, then asked Ayaka not to let Kazane hurt them. Therefore, Ayaka decided to join Medusa to increase her strength. The scene then switches to some time ago, where Ayaka turned out to have made a pact with Medusa to unite their powers. Despite the risk, Ayaka's body will be completely controlled by Medusa after the union, but it seems that Ayaka doesn't really care about that because it is the only way to deal with her mother. Turning to the present, seeing Ayaka who has merged with Medusa, Kazane then thinks that Medusa is not after Evermillion and Takamiya's body but is after her daughter. Kazane, who didn't stay silent when she saw her daughter join the evil witch, then didn't hesitate to attack Ayaka to stop Medusa. However, even though she has joined forces with one of the most powerful Tower Witches, Ayaka is by no means a match for her mother. Kazane can easily defeat Ayaka and Medusa and separate them both. Kazane then sent Ayaka and Takamiya to the dungeon as punishment. In prison, Ayaka looks worried that Medusa will complain about Takamiya's broken seal to her mother. Ayaka could only give up because her mother would find out sooner or later. She explains to Takamiya that her mother has sworn to protect him as long as the Evermillion seal inside his body is not broken. However, if the seal is broken, her mother will consider him a big threat and will try to kill him before endangering all life on Earth. Ayaka also deliberately protects Medusa and Tanpopo and the gang from her mother and the workshop witches, because if they are caught, her mother will torture them to get the information. Takamiya then asked about what steps they would take, to which Ayaka replied that she would challenge her mother to a fight and try to beat her. Because Kazane has a sporty nature, Ayaka will ask her mother to side with them if she manages to beat her sportively in a fight. Hearing Ayaka's plan, Takamiya immediately refused firmly because previously, Kazane managed to defeat Ayaka and Medusa easily, which shows how great Kazane's power is. It didn't stop there. Takamiya thought that because they had a relationship as mother and daughter, they shouldn't be fighting each other. Takamiya then suggested that they run out of the city, because according to the information he got from Kasumi, Kazane's magic power could not reach them if they were in another city. However, Ayaka rejects the suggestion and prefers to face her mother. Ayaka then tells Takamiya that she already has a plan. Elsewhere, Kazane and Kranoir are seen playing shogi together. The two of them were actually schoolmates, and got along very well with each other, despite being on opposite sides of each other. Kranoir is on relatively neutral terms with Kazane. Sometimes, Kazane physically beats and tortures her for informations, but other times, Kazane entrusts her as temporary chairman of the school while she's on other business. Kazane then expressed her anger at Kranoir because she couldn't hold Medusa any longer, even though she was looking forward to the moment when she would torture Medusa. However, Kazane had to swallow disappointment because the messenger from Rothenburg's workshop witches had arrived and immediately brought Medusa back to prison. Kazane could do nothing against the decision because the leader of Rothenburg's workshop witches was the supreme leader of the witches' workshop in the entire world. Turning back to Takamiya and Ayaka, because they could not escape from prison using her own power, Ayaka then borrowed some of Takamiya's power to escape from prison, which then damaged other parts of the school and made Kazane angry. Ayaka then prepares to fight her mother, but Kazane refuses and then orders the two of them to go home. On the way home, Ayaka and Takamiya concluded that Kazane didn't get any information from Medusa, so they too could feel relieved for a while. The scene then switches and shows Ayaka's past, where at that time Ayaka was still a little girl who had little barriers to socializing with people around her, to the point that her mother asked two young witches who were the same age as Ayaka to take care of her. Ayaka often spends her time after school looking for a certain boy at a nearby school, until she finally finds Takamiya. It turns out that the flashback of Ayaka's past was a dream from Takamiya. On the other hand, Kasumi looks very surprised when she sees Tanpopo and the gang in her house. Her mother then explained that from now on, Tanpopo and the gang would live with them and become their new family. Takamiya and his family then enjoy breakfast with them. While at school, Takamiya is forced to face challenges to his authority as the student council president. A girl who was the previous student council president plans to frame Takamiya. The girl lied to Rinan Otomedachibana, one of the 5 workshop witches assigned to protect the city, that Takamiya had physically abused her. Hearing that, Rinan ordered all her followers to destroy the school, and urged Takamiya to step down from his position as student council president. Rinan then challenges Takamiya to a one-on-one duel, and promises to stop the chaos at the school if Takamiya beats her. After learning that he was only slandered by the former student council president, Takamiya also ventured to meet Rinan alone and explain what really happened. But Rinan paid no heed to that, and immediately beat him in front of everyone, where Rinan intended to humiliate him. But then, he didn't stay still, and expended a little of his strength to fend off Rinan's attack. Because Takamiya refuses to harm Rinan, Ayaka then orders Tanpopo and the gang to help him confront Rinan. Because Tanpopo and the gang were not seen by the other students, Ayaka then made Takamiya who fought against Rinan and won the fight. After that, Takamiya was considered a hero and received praise because he was not proven to have committed acts of harassment. Later, it was revealed that Ayaka deliberately manipulated the former student council president just to reaffirm Takamiya's position at school. Knowing this, Rinan immediately became angry and immediately scolded her. After the fight against Rinan, and seeing Takamiya's poor fighting skills, she decides to teach Takamiya about offensive magic, and tries to make him summon a familiar by throwing him off the roof of a tall building. In a panic, Takamiya ends up summoning a giant image of Ayaka in a sexy nurse outfit that catches the two of them before punching a nearby building. Because the familiar summoning technique drained a lot of energy, Takamiya ended up passing out in Ayaka's arms. Meanwhile elsewhere, Kazane seems to be watching something very large and shining brightly. Kazane then meets with Rinan, who conveys a message from a tower witch named Weekend, who says that she has taken all the residents of the city hostage. Ayaka and Takamiya then ended their practice session and headed back home to prepare for the school exam tomorrow. On the next day, when the students were focusing on their school exams, Kazane met with Weekend, who told her that the giant and glowing round object that Kazane saw yesterday was a high explosive weapon of mass destruction capable of destroying an entire city. Kazane tries to negotiate with Weekend, who threatens to kill the entire town if Kazane doesn't hand Takamiya over. Kazane then refused the request, and Weekend had already anticipated it by preparing a backup plan. Weekend's plan was to keep detonating that giant bomb, where Kazane would use all her magic power to protect the townspeople. If Kazane's power becomes weaker, she will easily be defeated, and Weekend will have more freedom to capture Takamiya and take the ever-million power that is within his body. Due to running out of magic power, Kazane was successfully paralyzed by Weekend, then locked Kazane in a dungeon, and it took her a week to recover her strength again. Meanwhile at school, Ayaka, knowing there was an attack, immediately rushed to secure Takamiya. They then meet Rinan and another workshop witches, including Kasumi, who turns out to be Rinan's student. Ayaka and Takamiya were then escorted by Rinan into an underground cell to protect them both from the attacks of the tower witches. Ayaka assumed that Kazane already knew about Takamiya's broken seal, as she ordered Rinan and the others to lock them there. However, Ayaka and Takamiya then obeyed Rinan's orders to stay there for their safety. But then, the high-tech magic dolls created by Weekend managed to find their whereabouts. Ayaka then uses the doll to blow up a section of the wall and destroy it before Weekend arrives and captures them. After successfully escaping from the dungeon, Ayaka states that they now have no magical powers, nor do the other workshop witches. Meanwhile, the workshop witches are in crisis mode when Ayaka and Takamiya appear, and are very surprised to see their town destroyed by Weekend's giant magic bomb attack. Without Kazane's power, the workshop witches in the city couldn't use any magic, and no outside help would arrive in time. Takamiya immediately felt guilty and down because things had become like this because of him. Ayaka then calmed him by saying that the entire town had been saved by her mother and moved to a safe place before Kazane lost all her magic power. As Ayaka and Takamiya walk through the devastated city, Weekend captures a group of workshop witches and straps magical bombs to their bodies, demanding that they hand over Takamiya within 30 minutes or she will blow up the hostages one by one. Elsewhere, Kasumi enlists the help of Tanpopo and the gang to save the workshop witches who are Weekend hostages, as currently only the tower witches can use magic. While Rinan and Atori try to defuse the bomb, Ayaka takes Takamiya to the city center to renew the contract using Takamiya's latent power. But on the way, they were intercepted by a tower witch. Even without her magic power, Ayaka was able to defeat the witch. As Rinan and the workshop witches meet with Weekend to negotiate, Ayaka and Takamiya finally arrive at the city center, where Takamiya will make a contract with the city so the workshop witches can reuse their powers. Takamiya rushes to do as Ayaka asks, whereupon he renews the contract with his powers, allowing Rinan and the workshop witches to rescue the hostages and capture Weekend. However, after being thrown into a prison cell that can deprive a person of magical abilities, Weekend reveals that she deliberately allowed herself to be captured so she could destroy the workshop witches from within, which she did with more hidden bombs. Takamiya then uses his newfound powers to revive the workshop witches who died in the incident, but Ayaka then stopped him before he was killed for overexerting himself with his powers. Meanwhile, Cronoir seems to be interrogating one of Weekend's subordinates to dig up information about the mastermind behind the attack. Elsewhere, Ayaka then took the unconscious Takamiya to the ruins of Takamiya's house and laid him on the bed. In his sleep, Takamiya sees some of Kazane's memories, including her friendship with his mother at school. Takamiya also saw memories of when Kazane was asked by Ayaka to be the principal at his school so that Kazane could more freely supervise Takamiya. Takamiya then received word from Mikage-sensei that they were in an alternate reality created by the city due to the contract that Takamiya had just made. Mikage-sensei then took Takamiya to a shelter where the entire town was trapped in a state of suspended animation until they could be safely revived and had their memories erased. Meanwhile, in another place, Kasumi is seen fighting with the help of Tanpopo and the gang. When Kasumi was pushed and almost defeated, Medusa suddenly came to save her along with the others. Elsewhere, Ayaka meets with Otori to borrow her weapon and asks her to look after Takamiya, as Ayaka plans to fight Weekend alone. Ayaka then goes to a church to face Weekend. Knowing Ayaka's arrival, Weekend then used some of the bombs she planted around the church to drain Ayaka's magic power. Weekend and Ayaka get into a fierce battle. Even without Takamiya's power, Ayaka was able to face Weekend and make the evil witch desperate. Weekend seemed impressed with Ayaka's strength and fighting spirit. However, Weekend was able to easily turn things around and captured Ayaka using a giant monster golem. She revealed to Ayaka that she had planted a bomb in the city a few months ago as part of her plan. Turning back to Takamiya, Mikage-sensei decided to revive Takamiya because they were under attack from the Tower Witch on orders from Weekend. When Takamiya wakes up and meets Otori, Mikage-sensei then conveys a message to Takamiya that Weekend plans to destroy the townspeople's shelter unless Takamiya is sent to her within 30 minutes. Hearing that, Takamiya and Otori immediately rushed after Ayaka, who was fighting Weekend. He finally arrived there and found Ayaka lying helplessly. Without waiting long, he then gave more power to Ayaka so that she could rise again and defeat Weekend before she destroyed the shelter. However, despite being defeated, Weekend casually revealed that she had detonated the bomb. Elsewhere, when Tanpopo decides to bring Kasumi out of the rubble, Weekend bombs wipe out all the townspeople inside the shelter, including Mikage-sensei. Seeing this, Takamiya tries desperately to save them all, and makes a bargain with Evermillion at the cost of his life to save the city and everyone in it. However, Ayaka decides to trade her life with Takamiya at the last minute. Everyone and buildings in town are restored as if nothing happened, including Weekend, who stabs Takamiya with a knife. However, Weekend decides to heal Takamiya and admit defeat just before she meets Cronoir. Meanwhile, Takamiya, Otori, and Mikage-sensei try their best to bring Ayaka back to life by using some blood and a kiss of true love from Takamiya. Miraculously, Ayaka finally came back to life. Elsewhere, Cronoir appears to be punishing Weekend by stabbing her and all of her subordinates on sharp stakes. Not long after, Kazane appears and demands Cronoir to hand Weekend over to her for questioning. However, Cronoir refuses to give up Weekend and says that Weekend is her dinner. Because Cronoir insisted, the two then fought each other, and in the end, Kazane won. While in the subconscious, Takamiya and Mikage-sensei met Evermillion, who cancelled her agreement with Takamiya regarding his life. Evermillion then talks about the new contract Takamiya has made with her, and warns him about the consequences he will have to face if Takamiya tries to commit similar acts in the future. After that, Takamiya then woke up from his sleep, and found Ayaka, who greeted him at his door. The two then walked together to school when Tanpopo and the gang threatened them again on the way. Even without her magic power, Ayaka was still able to defeat them just by squeezing their faces until they finally gave up. The moral we can learn from this anime is that true strength does not come from a great talent that is hidden in us from birth, but comes from determination and a strong desire to protect and save those around us. Because that way, we will become stronger and achieve whatever we want.